Podcasting is a medium to communicate ideas, to inform, inspire, motivate, and connect. It's a way for you to share your thoughts and ideas with a targeted group of people. And it's also a great way just to have fun. So let's jump on in and talk about the why and how of podcasting. Welcome to The Friday Habit with Benjamin Manley and Mark Labriola II.
The Friday Habit is for creators, entrepreneurs, and agency owners looking for actionable ideas on how to grow their business and be more profitable.
We'll pull from our combined knowledge of over 20 years and interview thought leaders that will inspire you and give you the motivation you need to kick your business into high gear. Buckle up. It's Friday. All right. It is Friday somewhere in the world.
I feel like we need to be recording the video for this. Like, you know, we've been talking about doing video for this show, but I think the dance we do with the intro music is worth turning into an animated GIF and using on social media. What do you think?
I think maybe we just make a Friday Habit GIF.
I mean, you could just say it's Friday and it's us dancing.
Right.
I mean, it's perfect. It's a perfect meme.
It is the perfect meme.
So, yeah.
Did we get any reviews at all?
Yes, we did. We got a 5-star rating and a nice review from Jessie. She says, "Make this a habitual listen!" ! I like to always call out the exclamation point so people know.
So they know the passion behind it.
Yeah, since I have no intonation in my voice, I can't actually yell it. I just have to say that there's exclamation point. So she said, "So worthwhile for entrepreneurs or anyone with a goal to achieve. We're busy, and that means the majority of our behaviors come from operating out of our habits. Ben and Mark help us call out the ones that aren't serving us and challenge us to develop the ones that make us more efficient, be better leaders, and earn us more money. These habits are so smart and practical, you can employ them right now, all caps, and start experiencing less stress and more control in your business. Real deal advice from two dudes who are killing it. Listen to them. Period."
Whoa. Nice. I love that. That's great. It's always nice
thanks, Jesse.
To hear from people who are benefiting from the show and the knowledge that we've gained over the years. So it makes you feel good and it makes you want to just keep making great content.
That's right. Yeah. If you want to fuel our podcast here, if you think this should keep going out into the world, if you don't have to review us, but if you think this should keep happening, then that would be awesome. If you want to go over to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, I should say, and give us a rating, 5-star rating. And if you have an extra minute, just write us a quick review, and it really helps us get discovered. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, hey, I'm excited about today's topic because it's something that's near and dear to my heart.
Yes, I'm really excited.
The why
about
and how of podcasting. I started podcasting back in 2005. I read a popular science magazine that talked about these RSS feeds and podcasting. You could, record an episode of something and put it on the internet, and then the iPod could put those onto your device, and you could listen to them on the go. And when I was young, a kid, I would always do this thing where we'd go to a friend's house and we'd get on the bottom bunk and we'd have this little dictaphone tape player thing, and we'd have our own little radio show. And so, ever since I was 10, 11 years old, I was recording, pretending to have my own show or do something like that.
Dude, same thing. I did that with cassette tapes on a little recorder, and we would try to make sound effects, and you would have another, tape player there, and you would try to play some music at the right time and fade it out to add your sound.
See?
Yeah, same thing.
See, we were made for this, bro.
Exactly. We've been training for this our whole lives.
That's right. We've been training for podcasting forever. And then I started my first a podcast in 2005. I had a show called Me and My Mom, and Denise, my mom, a very eccentric woman, just kind of all over the place, just very interesting, character. I don't know if you ever seen Tiger King or anything like that, but
yeah, who hasn't seen Tiger King at this point?
Yeah, so she would be a great guest on the Tiger King. But I had this idea of what if I just call her and then record our conversations and talk about current events and things that are going on in the world and just see what random crazy stuff she talks about.
Quick question. Did your mom know this was a podcast, or did she think you were just calling her to talk to her?
No, she knew. Full disclosure, she knew we were podcasting. Started doing that in 2005, and just always have loved it, and I've done multiple shows since then, and Brand Viva manages several people's podcasts, and we help contribute those, and so it's just one of those things where I'm a big fan of podcasting and think that everybody should get into it because it's really enjoyable, and it's a way that you can really target a specific audience, right? And I say this all the time. A lot of times people are like, well, what's the point of me doing a show if I don't have like 1 million listeners? My rebuttal to that is always that, if you, say, held an event at a hotel, like in a conference room,
right,
and you had 50 or 100 people there, you would be like, wow, this room is pretty full. Like, there's a lot of people in this room. And so imagine if you had that type of listenership where 50 or 100 people were tuning in every week and listening to what you had to say about a particular topic. Like, that would be a big deal that you get to speak directly, to them. And I think podcasting is one of those things where it's very intimate.
Yeah.
Because you're in someone's ears, right? You're like 2 inches from their brain.
Don't think about it. Just everybody listening, don't think about that right now. It's
don't
weird.
Think about that. And so one of the things is, I just want to encourage people to say we're still really early in podcasting. If you think about it, there's over 500 million blogs that have been posted. On YouTube, there's 22 billion videos.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's nuts. Like, there's just so much content out there. But when it comes to podcasting, I believe there's like 700,000 podcasts that are online.
Yeah, that's interesting because I felt like, with this podcast, like, is it, have we missed the boat? Because, I've been listening to podcasts since, 2005 or maybe before that. It's like, hey, so that's a good question. I feel like people might have is like, have I missed the boat? Like, everybody's doing podcasts now, so is it too late, or whatever?
Right. Yeah, and it's not too late because, once again, those stats show that podcasting is still pretty in its infancy, even though, like you said, you've been listening to podcasts since 2004. I also had been listening to This Week in Tech and a couple other podcasts from back in the day, since 2004. And so, but I would still say that it's still, because of technologies reducing the barrier to entry, so it's a lot easier for people to get a USB mic that's affordable and start doing their own production. They can hop onto a site like Fiverr and get musical bumpers and voiceover intros and all those other kind of things at a very affordable cost. And so now it's making it even more accessible for the average person to get into. When I first started, we have to have all these like plugins, and we're using Skype and Soundflower and all these other types of things to hack the audio to make it all work together. But now you can pretty much do it online, like we do here with Squadcast. Shout out to Squadcast. We love those guys, and their platform's pretty solid and great for making podcasts. And the other thing is about that 700,000 podcasts that are out there in the world is that about 93% of those podcasts experience pod fade. So we're looking at just a small amount of podcasts that are actually out there creating content on a consistent basis. And if you don't know what pod fade is, it's essentially where you have an idea and you get passionate and excited about creating something, and then you start doing it, and then over time you find reasons why not to do it, or your life gets busy and you start skipping it, and then all of a sudden you stop making it altogether. And you'll see that a lot if you go on to iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast, and you'll go back like, oh wow, the last episode was in 2018.
Right.
And so one of the stats I saw was that there's actually only 175,000 active shows right now.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Those are all the reasons why I think someone should feel that they haven't missed the boat, and that there's still opportunity for them to get in there and create a podcast.
Yeah. And some other things I was just thinking about is just the cool thing about podcasts too is you can get into a really specific niche. Like you could, if there's your customer base and there's only 500 of your customer in the whole world, then you can probably get most of those people listening to your podcast, and that's still really valuable. So you can do really specific niches because it's not that expensive to do a podcast, and you can basically create something specifically for that audience, and you can kill it. So there's always new possibilities. You don't have to do a podcast like everybody else. You can just put a spin on something, and I feel like there's tons of opportunities left out there for new show ideas.
Yeah. No, 100%. So I want to start with the why. There's kind of 5 things that I share with people on why. The first being podcasts capture your audience attention. people like information that's easy to consume. If a blog post takes longer than 10 minutes to read, only 3% of people finish that blog post, whereas 43% of people will listen to a podcast from start to finish. So if you think about the content that you're creating, if you're spending all this time writing blog posts that most people aren't going to finish, you might as well just take that blog post and read it and make it into a podcast so someone can listen to it as they're commuting or driving to work or doing whatever they're doing. So one, podcast capture audience attention. Two, they create a personalized experience. People are used to having and holding conversations. It's a very natural thing, right? As humans, like even you and I, like we sit here with our mics and our headphones and we look at each other through the web and we have a good time and we just communicate and we talk and we listen to each other. And it's a format that people are used to already, right?
Right.
Listening to conversations. And I think it's one of those things that when you're listening to a conversation, it actually draws you in unintentionally, and you're just curious about what's being said next or what's going to happen next. So, yeah, I mean, I think that it's one of those things where it creates a personalized experience. You can really communicate ideas that are targeted specific to your audience and to something that you're interested in and that your audience is interested in as well. The third thing is that they help you build and maintain important network connections. This is huge, especially for entrepreneurs and agency owners, small businesses. One of the things that we do here at Brand Viva is I have a show called How'd You Get Here? And it's a show where I interview entrepreneurs, successful business people, and I just listen to their stories. I interview them on how they got to where they are. And I will tell you that a lot of times I'll just reach out to somebody cold because I don't know them, but I just say, hey, I have a podcast where I interview thought leaders. Would you want to be on my show? And 9 times out of 10, people are like, oh, wow, yeah, I would love to. That would be great.
Yeah.
And then... And once again, I started this podcast just as a hobby, like something that I just loved podcasting, and so something I wanted to do. But what I found have come from it, and we've actually gotten a few clients from it because people will come to my studio and we'll sit down, we'll have a conversation, and they're like, well, what do you do here at Brand Viva? And it's like, oh, well, we create content and, we do digital marketing. And it starts that conversation. And then right there, it's a way for me to get new business. And even for us, I mean, I don't think that you and I would communicate as much as we do if we didn't have this show that we are doing weekly.
Right.
And I value your friendship and relationship. And so the fact that we get to do this weekly, it helps us just maintain that connection. Yep. And I think that's really cool and it's important.
Yeah, I think that point is so powerful because it gives you the opportunity to add value to anyone in your target audience like pretty quickly and reach out to them and, like you said, cold email them, and you're giving them you're kind of doing them a favor and be like giving them a cool opportunity. But at the same time, when you have them on your show, you're going to learn a ton of stuff from them. So it's such a great win-win situation. And then also your audience gets to win too. So I mean, that's why I love it. And
I love it too, Ben.
So what's the next one? What's number 4?
Yeah. So 4 is, and this is more, I would say, specific to a certain industry or a certain goal that an individual would have. But podcasts can really open up a new financial avenue for you, right? If you have a very successful show, you can start to get sponsorships, and people will pay you to play ads on your show or for you to mention their products before or after your show. And so it's just, there's a lot of financial opportunity that could possibly be there. In a recent case study, actually, a real estate agent turned entrepreneur, his name is John Lee Dumas, was able to grow the income of his podcast, Entrepreneur on Fire, to $46,000 a month.
Wow. I want to know about that business model.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things where if you have the right niche and you can grow your audience to a very large size, you can make a decent living. I would say $46,000 a month is pretty decent.
Not bad. He's doing all right.
So sponsors, run ad. I mean, there's just, it's really one of those things where if you have that goal in mind, there's a chance that you could do it.
Yeah. I feel like this is a great opportunity for people that sell online courses or do trainings and stuff like that. It's a great, like, easy way into it to get leads for that. And so I think a lot of people monetize podcasts with that too, as like additional in-depth trainings or coaching or things like Patreon, you know, like subscribing for additional content,
special
or
content
behind the scenes or stuff like that. So there's so many ways to like monetize it, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that also then that brings us to our fifth point, is that podcasts really allow you to position yourself as a leader in your industry, right? You and I are nobodies who have our own businesses, but because we have a podcast and we share our ideas, now we are being considered as thought leaders in what we do, because you run an agency and I run an agency, and we're sharing our knowledge with the world. And so I think that just for this reason alone, everyone should have a podcast. If you are in a business, if you are, like you said, an internetpreneur, or somebody who is trying to position themselves as an authority on a particular topic, a podcast is a great way to do that, for you to put out content on a consistent basis and communicate those ideas that make people look at you as somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, that makes tons of sense. So I'm convinced. I know why I need to start a podcast. So how do I do it? What's the next step?
Well, the next step is you have to figure out a show idea, right? So like I want to start a podcast, but now what is my show going to be about? And so you really want to ask yourself a few questions. You want to say, one is, how do I currently make a living? What do I do that I would do even if I didn't get paid? What kind of communities do I belong to? Do I have any hobbies or things like that? And then what do I do better than anyone else? And so I think that's a great place to start. If you ask yourself those 4 questions, there's most likely an idea in there for a show. The birth of this show really came from that, right?
Yep.
You and I were hanging out in the mountains of Colorado. We were talking business and just sharing ideas with each other. And you started talking about this process that you do with your team at Knapsack, where you get everyone together on a Friday and you talk about the previous week, what worked, what didn't work. You assign tasks to certain people, and then you move forward with your business and its growth. And so after hearing that, I was like, hey, I want to do that. And then it was like, you know what, this would be a great podcast episode or show.
Yep.
And that's where this show came from, is from that.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of like the idea of like, what's one unique thing that we feel like we can offer the world that would be valuable to share with other people? And yeah, I feel like that's a great advice. You know, I think it's finding a twist in the idea too is a great thing. Just something that people can latch onto beyond just a general business podcast or general whatever. Like what you said, like what do you do better than anybody else? Like in your niche, like what is the most specific way that you could put a twist on that and be creative with like how you do your show? I think that's a really great idea.
Yeah, and if all else fails, if after you ask yourself those questions you still can't think of a show idea, read your blog post, right? Maybe you're better at coming up with ideas and writing down your thoughts and via a blog post. Well, there's several very successful podcasts that are just reading their blog posts.
Yeah.
It's one of those ways that you can share your content or make your content very consumable by having multiple mediums of it, right? So if you have a video, if you have a blog post, if you have the podcast of the blog post, it just diversifies what you're doing and allows people to consume your content in a way that works best for them.
Yeah. I actually, speaking of like turning your blog post into a podcast, I listened to this podcast for a while called Optimal Living Daily. It was literally a guy that would find the best blog post that he had read that week, and then he basically every day would read a blog post out loud that he didn't even write, but he got permission or whatever from the person and said, hey, can I read your blog post on my podcast? And so he has content. He has unlimited content. He's not even coming up with himself, but he curates it and he records it. So it's basically like an audio version of a blog. So you don't have to go out and search for what blog to read that day. And you can literally listen to it on the way to work. So that alone, if you just niche that in your industry and become a podcast that just talks about I don't know, whatever it is, like how to fix tractors, and you just pull like blog posts or articles or whatever information you want and just start reading that out loud for your audience, like that in and of itself is valuable.
Yeah, 100%. So get out there. You have no excuses. Get out there and make a podcast.
That's awesome. Well, so what would you say if you had an action item for people to kind of do after this episode? Like what would you recommend people do?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is head over to brandviva.com and download our free guide on how to start a podcast. It explains everything I talked about in this episode in a nicely designed PDF, and so you can download that, and that'll kind of give you a jump on what you need to do.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed all this. I know I learned a lot, even though I have already done a podcast with Mark, but I'm still learning new stuff. This is awesome. If you want to learn more about the Friday Habit, you can just go to thefridayhabit.com. You can also find links to our websites at thefridayhabit.com and ways to get in touch. So if you want to get in touch with Mark about any of this stuff, his social links are there. And then at the very bottom of the page, you can download the guide to the Friday Habit that Mark mentioned earlier, which is our PDF that basically walks you through the system that we created that allows you to spend time every Friday working on your business instead of in your business. And it kind of helps you step by step set aside that full day every week, which is going to really help you long term. So that's it. What else you got, Mark? Is that it?
You know what? That is it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with Ben and I on the Friday Habit. And remember, until next time, live every day like it's Friday.